Hey guys, welcome back to Living Crowned and Confident. I am T. Marie and I am your host for Merry Brightness. So, just in case you guys missed yesterday's video, let's do just a little recap and then we'll get into day two. So, day one was all about your identity, protecting your identity, making sure that your identity is founded and grounded, and it's so deeply rooted that nothing can come in and sweep you up from your foundation, not even the hustle and bustle of Christmas. So, let's get into day two. Day two is all about killing comparison. Our scripture for day two is Galatians 6, 4, and 5. So, let's get into it. Again, I'm coming out of the King James Version. Galatians 6, 4, and 5 says, "But let every man prove his own work, and then shall he have rejoicing in himself alone." I'm going to read that one more time. "But let every man prove his own work, and then shall he have rejoicing in himself alone, and not in another. For every man shall bear his own burden." And I did it in the New Living Translation as well as the Children's Translation, as well as the Children's Version, because I like how they both broke them down just a little bit more. So let's get into that. So Galatians 6 again, 4 and 5, the New Living Translation says, "Pay careful attention." I apologize if you hear my kids in the background. They're in the living room having fun. Pay careful attention to your own work, for then you will get the satisfaction of a job well done, and you won't need to compare yourself to anyone else, for we are each responsible for our own conduct. And then the children's version, which I absolutely love, that it breaks it down even more than what the New Living Translation broke it down. So I felt the need to bring in the children's version as well, because I wanted to let others know that you don't have to lack that confidence in having to go to a children's Bible. You don't have to, you don't have to lack that confidence in knowing that you need that extra understanding, that extra level. Going that extra mile just shows God and proves to God that you're ready for what it is that He has in store for you. So don't be ashamed if you have to go to the children's Bible. Don't be ashamed if you have to dig into any of the versions of the Bible, because that's what they're there for. If you can't understand the New King James Version, or I'm sorry, if you can't understand the King James Version, then go to the New King James Version. If you can't understand that, then go to a different version. But choose the version that speaks directly to you. But I always say, make sure you line it back up with the King James Version, the original version, to make sure that it's coinciding with what the original is saying. So the children's version is saying he should not compare himself with others. Each person should judge his own actions. Then he can be proud of what he himself has done. Each person must be responsible for himself. And I found a pattern here, so I even broke down the two words, the understanding of two words. So comparison was one, and then responsible was another word. They were, I noticed the trend in that. And in killing comparison, in killing comparison, of course, we need to know what the definition of comparison is in order to not have that comparison, in order to not compare ourselves to one another. And then responsible, if we are killing comparison and we're taking responsibility for our own actions, we're taking responsibility for our own accounts, we're taking responsibility for our own walks, we're taking responsibility for our own personal journey with God. In order for us to take responsibility for that, we need to know and understand what the word responsible really means. So comparison means consideration or estimate. I love that part. Consideration or estimate of similarities or differences. So it's just an estimate. So if you're looking at someone else from the outside and you're on the outside looking in at their lives, you're estimating what they're doing. You're estimating their life. You're estimating what it looks like. You don't have an accurate judgment. You're simply estimating what it looks like to you. And then responsible means having an obligation to do something or having control over or care for one's own job or role. So you're just taking that responsibility. You're taking accountability. You're holding on to what it really means for yourself. You're being held accountable for your own actions on yourself. You're holding yourself accountable for your own actions. That's basically what responsibility means. It means that if God has entrusted me with my children, then he has entrusted me to be responsible for them. So if they're lacking something, I'm responsible for making sure that they get that. Me or their father is responsible for making sure that they get that. If they're lacking something in understanding, I'm responsible for making sure that they get that understanding. Me as their parent, or my husband, we are responsible for that. So that's what responsible means. So killing comparison, what does it have to do with Christmas? So, like I said yesterday, we tend to, around the Christmas time, we tend to make sure that our kids have what they want. We tend to make sure that we do whatever it is that we have to do to get, like, if that means working multiple hours, if that means um, having to sell something maybe that we have, if that means that we have to go out and get a second job, we're going to do whatever it is necessary to make sure that our kids have an awesome Christmas, which is great. You're being responsible. You're being a responsible parent. However, I want you to look at that from the biblical side, from a spiritual side. And in order to not let Christmas break that confidence, as well as not breaking your identity, as we discussed yesterday, then we need to hold on to, number one, the identity and who we are. We need to hold true to our actions and be accountable for our actions. So if we are out getting another job, if we are out working multiple hours, then we're not being responsible for our own home. We're not being responsible for our own children. We're not taking our accountability and being responsible for who and what God has entrusted to us. And in that, then that shows that we're lacking confidence. That shows that we're lacking in identity. That shows that we're not fully trusting God to make sure that we have what we need. He's going to make sure that we have what we need. It's up to us to trust him and not look at somebody else's life. So you looking on the inside out and looking at my life, you're probably thinking, "Oh, she's got it all together." You're probably thinking she's not lacking anything. You're probably thinking, "Oh, she's dotting every I and crossing every T." You are looking from the outside looking in, and you're comparing yourself and saying, "Okay, well, how can I get that? And how can I get this? And how can I do that? How can I get to that?" That is what we want to not do. If we see parents go out here and get these $100 shoes, and we see these parents go out here and get the high dollar clothes, and we see parents go out here and get the highest or the newest phone for their children, maybe the newest laptop for their children, we don't want you to do that, to look at that and say, "Oh, well, that's what I have to do." That is when you start comparing your life to their life. Just because they're doing it doesn't mean that you have to do it. Just because they're spending big bucks doesn't mean you have to do that. Just like we said, comparison is an estimate. So comparison is an estimate. So in that estimate, you're on the outside looking in. You don't know what that person had to go through to get what they got. You don't know how many hours that person had to work. You don't know. You just don't know what that person had to go through to get through. You don't know what that person had to go through to get what it is that they have. You're simply on the outside looking in, and you're judging, you're estimating, you're comparing. And instead of holding on to the vision and the view that God gave you for your family, you're looking at somebody else's vision and view, and you're comparing that, saying, "Oh, they have it, so that means I have to have it. They're doing it, so that means I have to do it." No, no, no. That is not what we want to do. We want to hold true to our identity. We don't want to compare our life to their life. We don't want to compare our checks to their checks because they might not look the same. We don't want to compare our Christmas tree to their Christmas tree because they may have you may have, 5 or 6 gifts underneath of your Christmas tree. But your 5 or 6 gifts might equal up to what you need, what God sees fit for your children and your home and your life. Whereas another family may have 20 gifts under their tree. That is what they need to supply for their children. That is what God gave them for their children. So don't look at somebody else's lifestyle. Don't look at somebody else's tree. Don't look at somebody else's checks. Don't look at somebody else's way of living and say, just because they're doing it, that means I have to do it. Christmas is a huge, huge, huge time when people, Christmas and Easter, I'm going to say, but we're discussing Christmas. So Christmas is a huge time when a lot of people try to compare their lives to another person. When a lot of people try to look on the outside and look in and say, because they're doing it, I have to do it. Instead of holding true to who and what God is in your life. Your relationship with God is your own personal relationship with God. He knows you inside and out. So he knows what you need. He knows what you want. He knows what you desire. He knows what goes on inside of your home. You don't know what goes on inside of somebody else's home. You don't know what goes on inside of somebody else's life. You don't know what goes on inside of somebody else's mind. So don't look at what another person has and say, I need to have that. I want to have that. I need for my kids to do the same thing that your kids are doing. That's not how it works. Because the very minute that you do that, the very minute that you try to step into their lifestyle, that shows God that you don't trust him. That shows him that you don't care about the identity that he has for you personally. And it also shows that you're lacking in that identity. You're not founded and you're not grounded. It's not a firm foundation. So we don't want to look at somebody else's lifestyle, especially at Christmas time. We don't want to look at somebody else's lifestyle and look at what somebody else is doing. Look at what somebody else is buying and say, this is what I need to do. So that is all that I have for today. And as I said yesterday, each day is going to end with a journal prompt. So our journal prompt for today is, God, show me where I am comparing myself. Show me what area in my life I am comparing myself with others. And how can I make sure that is killed today? And I know a lot of Christians don't like to use the kill term, but I chose it for today because when we kill comparison, we're deading it, we're ending it, we're stopping it. It comes to a halt. So you can choose to rephrase killing comparison however you want to choose to rephrase it, but I felt as though I was led to use killing comparison because we know that killing, when we're killing it, we're deading it. We're stopping it right there in its tracks. And that's what we want to do when it comes to comparison. We want to stop it right there in its tracks before it gets too far. So God, how can I kill that comparison? So just to reiterate, the journal prompt that we're going to do today is, God, what area am I comparing in my life? In what area am I comparing in my life? And how can I kill that comparison? How can I kill that comparison? Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining me for day 2. I hope and pray that you have enjoyed it. I hope and pray that you have taken something out of it. And I hope and pray that God has opened up your eyes to accept your identity, like we discussed yesterday. Accept your identity, and in that accepting your identity, you are now able to kill comparison. Stay tuned and join us back tomorrow for day 30.